It's been 59 years since Alabama state troopers attacked hundreds of black voting rights activists as they marched peacefully across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. Just hours ago, Vice President Kamala Harris joined a march across that same bridge to commemorate what's come to be known as Bloody Sunday.
They knew violence against them was inevitable, and they returned to this bridge while many were still bound in bandages because they knew what was on the other side. A promise of a future that was more equal, more just, and more free.
Joining us now, Mark Morial is former New Orleans mayor and president of the National Urban League, and Derek Johnson, he's president and CEO of the NAACP. Good to have you both on, gentlemen. Thanks for joining me this Sunday.
Thanks, Jim.
Derek, Voting Rights Act was signed into law just 6 months after Bloody Sunday. It has been nearly 6 decades. And yet, I think it's safe to say the work continues. Many states have enacted voting restrictions after the 2020 elections, based in part on Donald Trump's false claims of election fraud. You met with Harris at the White House last week. Do you still find moments like this notable? And is the fight still on, in effect?
Well, it's a sobering moment. We met with the vice president earlier this week. We're commemorating the 59th year of the March, the Bloody Sunday, and yet we are in the midst of 8 lawsuits across the country to protect the rights of voters. We just won the lawsuit right there in Alabama to ensure African Americans in that state could elect a candidate of choice in a second congressional district. So it's both what we call a Sankofa moment. We are still dealing with the past as we exist in this present, as we fight towards a future that's more inclusive of all communities.
Let me ask you this, Mark, because as you know, you've seen the polls too, the groups of Democratic voters who supported President Biden in 2020 are not as unified behind him, including African American voters. Do you consider that notable? Is it sizable? And could it be decisive?
I think early polls don't matter. I think the election day is what counts. These polls have never been predictive of the outcome on election day this early in the process. Having said that, voting rights and the protection of democracy is a core issue for not only black voters, but for many other voters, a core issue central to how they will cast their vote. So I think it's incumbent on the president and his administration to accelerate their emphasis on passing the John Lewis Voting Rights Act in not only the remainder of this term, but in a second term. It's got to be essential. And Jim, here's the thing. Half the states have passed expansive pro-democracy laws. This is true. But half the states are on steroids when it comes to the effort to strip away the right to vote with a range of suppression laws.
And those, I mean, listen, you could divide those states and those groups pretty much by blue and red. Derek, at a rally in North Carolina last night, Donald Trump, he referenced the Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, who's currently the frontrunner to the GOP nominee for North Carolina governor. Mark, we should note, is black, has a history, though, of derogatory comments about Muslims and members of the LGBTQ community. I want to play for our viewers who haven't heard this how Trump described him and get your reaction. Have a listen.
This is Martin Luther King on steroids, okay? Now, I told that to Mark. I said, I think you're better than Martin Luther King. I think you are Martin Luther King times 2.
Martin Luther King times 2? What's your reaction to that description?
Well, this is a sad commentary. The very books they're seeking to ban are the books they should read. This election is about fascism versus democracy. And we choose democracy. We choose the voice of the collective whole of what we call America. We choose a future that is recognizable based on all the citizens, not a past that was exclusionary at best, discriminatory in practice, and eliminated the hopes and dreams and the potential of this country by suffocating the voices like Martin Luther King and so many others. So whatever that former president talks about, we should take with a grain of salt, not try to make false comparison, and really look forward towards a future that's inclusive and that really sprouts out of democracy.
Mark, I'd like your reaction too, because is there just a, I hate to use the word, but just a dumb factor to this? I mean, to make that comparison, to say he is twice the man that Martin Luther King, who fought through times before the Civil Rights Act, before the Voting Rights Act, when, as you know, it was, he made a lot of progress during that time that the history books, if folks have read them, shows definitively.
So one side of me, Jim, doesn't want to dignify such utter stupidity with a remark. But having said that, Donald Trump has a habit, and he deserves a gold medal, in insulting Black people and insulting the cause of justice. And here we go once again with this effort to diminish the, if you will, legacy of a great American by comparing him to any aspiring wannabe politician. I'm offended by it, and many are offended by it, but it's par for the course.
Mark Morial, Derek Johnson, thanks so much to both of you.